Have you ever looked back at a relationship and asked yourself, was that even real? Have you ever felt like love started off as a lie, only to slowly reveal something breathtakingly true? It's easy to assume love must begin with purity, clarity, or that magical feeling we see in movies. But let me challenge that tonight. What if some of the truest love stories actually begin as fake ones? That might sound strange, maybe even unsettling, but let's pause and reflect. Sometimes what we call fake love is simply love in its unripe form. It's love shaped by fear, by past pain, by insecurity. It shows up wearing masks, trying to please, to protect, or to prove something. And yes, in the beginning, it feels fake because it is. But here's the truth most people won't say out loud: love doesn't need to be perfect to be real. Real love isn't always how it starts, it's how it evolves. When two people drop their masks, when they stop performing and start showing up. Messy, flawed, vulnerable, that's where the magic begins. Isn't it wild how love can grow out of the most unexpected places? You thought they were just a rebound, they thought you were just a distraction, but somehow you stayed, you worked, you fought for it, and slowly the pretending gave way to presence. But let's be clear, this transformation doesn't happen by accident. It takes courage. It takes looking each other in the eye and saying, I know we didn't start with truth, but I want to build it now. It takes two people willing to stop blaming and start becoming, to stop escaping and start evolving. True love, you see, isn't effortless. It's earned through growth, through conflict, through showing up again and again, even when it hurts. Some of the most authentic, breathtaking relationships I've seen didn't start in the stars. They started in chaos, in confusion, even in dishonesty. But what changed everything was the willingness to grow, go from imitation to intimacy. So if you're sitting there tonight, wondering if your story is too broken to be beautiful, don't give up. What begins as fake can still become true, not because it always will, but because you choose to make it so, because healing, connection, and love, they aren't found, they're built. Thank you. Love isn't always born pure. Sometimes it's built. We grow up believing that real love is instant, that if it's real, it should feel right from the very beginning. Effortless, electric, instinctively perfect. But what if I told you that some of the deepest, most transformative relationships don't start that way at all? What if real love doesn't appear pure at first, but becomes pure over time? Isn't that worth considering? See, many of us have been conditioned by stories, movies, novels, even social media. I think love should begin with butterflies, clarity, and certainty. We're taught to crave the feeling of knowing right away, this is the one. Anything less than that gets labeled as fake, forced, or doomed. But let's pause. Life isn't a movie, and neither is love. In reality, love can begin in confusion. It can be born in insecurity. It can start in the most unexpected way, with wrong motives, broken intentions, or wounded hearts. That doesn't mean it's worthless. It just means it hasn't matured yet. Love, in its raw beginning, can be messy. Maybe he was trying to impress. Maybe she wasn't honest about her needs. Maybe both were scared of being alone, so they showed up with masks, smiling, pretending, overperforming, and yes, that can feel fake. But here's the truth. Just because a relationship doesn't start with pure intention doesn't mean it can't become one of the most authentic things you'll ever experience. You've heard of people falling in love with someone they didn't even like at first, right? That's because initial attraction or emotional chaos doesn't always predict the final outcome. We tend to romanticize beginnings far more than we value becomings, and that's the missing piece. Relationships evolve. People grow and love builds. Imagine this: two people come together. They don't really know themselves yet. They're carrying baggage, maybe trust issues, childhood wounds, insecurities. Their early connection might be filled with projection, fantasy, even manipulation. It might look like chemistry, but it's really codependency. It might feel like closeness, but it's actually control. That's not real love, right? Yes and no. What if it's the seed of love? buried under fear, ego, and survival instincts, but still capable of growing into something honest. The truth is, many people don't start from a place of emotional wholeness. They love from the place they are, unfinished, unhealed, unsure, and what we often call fake love is actually just immature love. Like unripe fruit, it hasn't had enough time, pressure, or nourishment to become what it's truly meant to be. So, why does this matter? Because when we immediately reject relationships that don't feel right, from day one, we risk missing out on growth based love. We dismiss people who might be perfect for us after healing, but imperfect in their first impression. We throw away potential just because it wasn't packaged in certainty. Now, let's be clear. This doesn't mean we should tolerate toxicity or abuse under the excuse that it's just unhealed love. Not at all. Emotional growth and accountability are non negotiable. But if both people are willing to grow, if they can face themselves and each other with honesty, then something extraordinary can happen. Love can be rebuilt. Over time, performance can become presence, pretending can shift into authenticity, attraction based on insecurity can evolve into deep, soulful respect when two people start taking off their emotional armor, when they say, "This is who I really am." And the other responds with, "I'm not going anywhere." That's when fake love begins to break and true love starts to form. But it takes time, it takes missteps, it takes nights of questioning and days of working through emotional residue. It takes unlearning everything society told us about how love should look and learning how love actually feels when it's rooted in growth, safety, and truth. Isn't that what makes love powerful? That it doesn't need to be perfect from the start? That it can be sculpted, like clay, through intention, vulnerability, and trust. Think of relationships like architecture. No one expects a building to stand firm if the foundation is cracked. But what if the builders acknowledge the cracks and choose to repair them together? What if they pour new concrete, reinforce the beams, and slowly shape something strong? Isn't that more impressive than a building that looked perfect but was hollow inside? Similarly, some of the most resilient relationships are not the ones that started out looking flawless. They're the ones that started off unsteady, but became strong because two people chose each other again and again. Even when it was hard, even when it hurt, even when it felt easier to give up. That's why love isn't always born pure. Sometimes it's built from the ashes of pain, from the ruins of mistakes, and from the bricks of deep emotional effort. And maybe that kind of love, the one you fight for, the one you grow into, the one that didn't begin as a fairy tale but became your home, is the most honest love of all. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, "This feels fake," ask yourself, is it truly fake? Or is it just unfinished? Is this relationship broken? Or is it becoming? Is this the end of something meaningless? Or the beginning of something that hasn't learned how to be meaningful yet? Love doesn't always arrive polished. Sometimes it comes raw, scared, and full of flaws. But with courage and care, it can become the most breathtaking thing you've ever known. Because love isn't always born pure sometimes. It's built. Fake love often mirrors our own wounds. What if the love you called fake wasn't about the other person pretending, but about you not seeing your own emotional reflection clearly? What if that relationship you regret so much wasn't a mistake, but a mirror? Fake love often doesn't come out of nowhere. It doesn't just land in our lives accidentally. It's drawn to us, or we're drawn to it, because it matches something familiar deep inside, not something healthy. Something unhealed. So many people ask, why do I keep falling for the wrong person? But maybe the better question is, what in me still feels drawn to someone who doesn't see me clearly? Why does inconsistency still feel like love to me? Because fake love, more often than not, is not strategically evil. It's emotionally wounded, it's chaotic, reactive, and layered in fear, and so is the person who accepts it. Both are dancing in the patterns of pain they never learned to interrupt. Let's break it down. You meet someone, they say the right things, they offer affection, validation, presence, but something inside you already knows it's not solid. There are gaps between their words and their actions. Their interest feels like a roller coaster, hot one day, distant the next. You feel anxious, but also weirdly addicted to their attention. It feels like love, but it also feels like you're constantly trying to earn it. Why do we stay in this dynamic? Because somewhere along the way, we internalize the idea that love is supposed to feel unsafe, that love equals uncertainty, that proving your worth is part of the package. That if someone pulls away and you can get them to come back, that must mean you're lovable, right? But that's not love, that's survival, and that's the trap. We mistake familiar pain for real connection. We don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with patterns that match our past. So if you grew up around emotional unpredictability, a chaotic relationship might feel like home. If you were constantly trying to win affection, a partner who makes you chase them will feel strangely magnetic. That's why fake love feels so real. It mirrors the old wounds we haven't yet named. It reflects the parts of ourselves that still believe we're not worthy of unconditional care. And unless we face those wounds, we'll keep mistaking intensity for intimacy. We'll keep calling emotional hunger chemistry. We'll keep being drawn to what hurts just because it feels familiar. That's the hardest part to admit, isn't it? That we sometimes choose these relationships, not because they're good, but because they echo something inside us that still needs healing. And here's where it gets even more layered. The person giving you fake love, they're likely not operating out of cruelty. They're operating out of their own unhealed pain, too. Maybe they never learned how to give love without conditions. Maybe vulnerability terrifies them. Maybe they associate closeness with danger, so they push and pull, cling and run over and over again. They're not faking love to hurt you. They're just reenacting the only version of love they've ever known. And so are you. That's why these relationships can feel so electric and yet so empty. There's real emotional energy being exchanged, but it's not nourishing, it's not grounded, it's not safe. It's fear trying to dance as love. And we all know fear's rhythm eventually breaks the floor beneath us. So, how do you know if it's fake love or just two people struggling? Ask yourself, do I feel consistently emotionally safe with this person? Can I be my full self, or do I feel I have to shrink to keep them? Am I constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop? Do I feel like I'm auditioning for their love? Over and over again, if the answer to those is yes, then you're not in love. You're in a dynamic that's feeding your wounds, but don't shame yourself. Don't call yourself stupid or blind. You're human, and humans are wired for connection, even if that connection sometimes comes with pain. What matters is what you do after you recognize the pattern. Some people think fake love is just about lies, manipulation, and betrayal, but that's only the surface layer. More often, fake love is about emotional unavailability disguised as intensity. It's about two people who are afraid to be alone, but don't know how to truly be together. It's about people using connection to soothe pain, not to build something healthy. And when that becomes clear, when you finally see it, that's where healing begins. Because you realize I wasn't crazy, I wasn't broken. I was just choosing from a wounded place, and the moment you start choosing from a healed place, fake love can't survive there. That's the beauty of emotional growth. When you face your wounds, really face them, you stop needing love to rescue you. You start receiving love, not chasing it. You stop trying to fix people in hopes that fixing them will somehow fix you. You start craving peace more than passion, safety more than spark, wholeness more than obsession. So no, fake love isn't always some grand deception. Often it's a mirror. It shows you who you've been, what you've believed, and what inside of you still needs your own love before anyone else's can ever feel real. Because when you finally love yourself enough to stop settling for pain, that's when fake love loses all its power. And that's when you finally make room for the real thing. Real love begins when masks fall off. People say they want real love. They crave deep connection. They long to be seen, known, cherished. But here's the question nobody wants to answer honestly. Are you willing to be truly seen? Are you ready to take off your mask? Because that's where it all begins. That's where real love starts. Not at the first kiss, not with the romantic dates, not in the perfectly filtered moments you share on social media. But in that quiet, terrifying, beautiful moment when you drop the act and let someone see the real you, we live in a world obsessed with image, first impressions, highlight reels, constant performance. We've learned how to be liked, how to be impressive, how to be accepted. But have we learned how to be known? Fake love thrives in performance. It loves the show, the version of you who's funny, flirty, charismatic, the you who always looks put together, the you who says the right thing and hides the mess behind closed doors. But that kind of love, it's love for a persona, not a person, and no matter how much validation you get from it, a part of you always knows this isn't it, because deep inside you're wondering if they knew the real me, would they still stay? If they saw my wounds, my fears, my shame, would they still choose me? That question haunts people. It drives them to wear masks in their relationships, emotional masks, perfection masks, hyper, independent masks, even trauma, masking humor. But here's the truth. The longer you keep the mask on, the lonelier you'll feel even in love. You can have someone's arms around you and still feel completely invisible if they're hugging your mask, not your soul. Real love doesn't begin when two people meet. It begins when two people decide to stop pretending. When one person says, "This is who I really am, here's my fear of abandonment, here's the way I self-sabotage, here's the wound I'm still trying to heal." And the other says, "I see you, and I'm not walking away." That moment, that's intimacy, that's presence. That's where love stops being an illusion and starts becoming alive. But why is it so hard to drop the mask? Because the mask keeps us safe. It protects us from judgment, rejection, abandonment. Many of us learned very early that being our full selves wasn't safe. We were too loud, too sensitive, too emotional, too different. So we edited ourselves, toned it down, covered it up, held it in. We performed lovable versions of ourselves because the real version wasn't accepted. So of course we bring those habits into adult relationships. Of course, we default to managing impressions. Of course, we try to be the partner we think someone wants instead of showing up as who we really are. But here's the cost. When you wear a mask, the love you receive isn't truly yours. It's for the mask. That's why you still feel insecure even when someone loves you. That's why you ask, do they really know me? That's why you struggle to trust the love. They've never seen your shadows. And love that only sees the light is not love, it's admiration, it's infatuation, it's fantasy. Real love begins where fantasy ends. It begins when you say, "I have trust issues and I'm working on them." When you admit, "Sometimes I shut down because I'm scared you'll leave." When you confess, "There are parts of me I'm still learning how to accept. Will you hold space for me while I do?" And yes, it's scary to be that honest, because dropping the mask means risking rejection. It means facing the possibility that someone might walk away, not from who you pretended to be, but from who you actually are, and that kind of rejection, that cuts deep. But here's the paradox. The very thing we're most afraid of, being seen, is the thing we most desperately crave. No one wants to be loved because they're perfect. We want to be loved despite not being perfect. We want someone to look at our messy insides and say, "I still see something beautiful here." Isn't that what love is about? Not loving people once they've got it all figured out, but choosing them in their in-betweens, in their vulnerable becoming. But let's be clear, dropping the mask isn't about emotional dumping or being reckless with your truth. It's about creating an emotionally safe space, one built on mutual respect, empathy, and non-judgment, where both partners can slowly, gently, consistently reveal their real selves. It doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes you let the mask down in small ways. You stop pretending to like something just to be agreeable. You express a boundary instead of staying silent. You admit that you're scared to be vulnerable because the last time you were hurt. And the more you take that risk and find that the relationship still holds, the more your nervous system begins to believe, maybe I can actually be safe in love. And on the other side of that, connection that feels like exhaling. Because finally, you don't have to keep performing. You don't have to wonder what version of you they love today. You don't have to keep earning the connection. You can rest in it, and you begin to understand what real intimacy feels like. It's not just being naked together, it's being emotionally naked, seen, known, and still chosen. It's not just being told, I love you. It's hearing, I know you, and I still want to be here. So many people never reach this level of love, not because they're not capable, but because they're too afraid to take off the mask. But the truth is, no one can love what you don't reveal. If you hide your fears, you hide the chance for someone to help hold them. If you bury your shame, you bury the chance for someone to remind you it's not the truth about you. If you edit yourself to be more acceptable, you rob someone of the gift of loving the full, raw, real you. Love is not a reward for perfection. It's a response to truth. So when do you know it's real? Not when everything's romantic, not when everything's smooth, but when the masks fall and the love stays. That's when the real story begins. Transformation requires conscious effort. People love the idea of transformation, the glow up, the healed relationship, the second chance that turns into forever. We fantasize about the breakthrough, the moment everything changes, the moment we finally get it right. But what most people don't talk about is the grit it takes to actually get there, because transformation. It doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen because you hope it will. It happens because you choose it over and over again, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when everything inside you wants to run. Especially in love. We want love to magically fix things. We want it to just flow. We say, if it's meant to be, it'll be easy. But really, since when does anything meaningful come without effort? Since when does deep, healing, soul, growing connection come without facing the parts of ourselves that we've spent years avoiding? The truth is, love will trigger you before it transforms you. It will surface your fears. It will poke your wounds. It will reflect your insecurities. And if you're not ready to do the work, not just with the other person, but with yourself, you'll call it toxic or say, we're just not compatible, and walk away. But compatibility isn't always about having no friction. Sometimes it's about being able to stay in the room while the friction teaches you something you didn't know about yourself. Isn't that where transformation actually begins? That uncomfortable moment when your partner says something that hits a nerve, that evening when a simple disagreement leaves you spiraling, that silence after a fight that makes you question your worth. You want to run, you want to shut down, you want to go back to the version of love that required less from you. But if you pause, if you stay, if you lean in and ask, what is this moment trying to teach me about me? You grow. You don't just grow in love, you grow through love, and that growth doesn't happen automatically. You have to decide to do it. You have to stay conscious because the default is always protection, not connection. Your nervous system will default to what it knows: defensiveness, withdrawal, blame. But transformation happens when you interrupt that pattern with awareness. You catch yourself mid-reaction and ask, why is this triggering me so much? You sit in discomfort and choose curiosity over control. You tell your partner, this feels really hard for me, but I don't want to shut down. I want to understand this together. That's effort, that's intention, that's emotional labor, and that's what transforms relationships. People think love is about finding the right person, but what if it's more about becoming the right person, not a perfect person, not a heal, all my trauma person, but a person who's willing to stay awake, willing to be accountable, willing to shift. Effort doesn't mean forcing a connection that doesn't work. It doesn't mean fixing someone or sacrificing your emotional safety, but it does mean showing up with a willingness to engage with your patterns. It means recognizing that if the same conflict keeps happening, it's not just them, it's something in you that's asking for attention, because love can't grow where awareness isn't present, and relationships can't evolve if we don't take responsibility for what we bring to them. You can't just hope communication gets better. You have to practice it. You have to risk the awkward conversations. You have to resist the urge to win arguments and instead ask, how can we understand each other better right now? You can't just wish for trust. You have to earn it. Not by being perfect, but by being consistent, by being honest, especially when it's inconvenient, by repairing, not just apologizing. You can't just pray for intimacy, you have to create it through small, everyday acts of emotional availability, through vulnerability, through showing up, not just when it feels good, but especially when it doesn't. That's the difference between romanticizing transformation and living it. Transformation is not about flipping a switch. It's about building new emotional muscles. It's about catching yourself in old cycles, deflection, self sabotage, fear, and choosing a different response. It's about saying, this isn't working, and I'm willing to look at my part in that. And yes, both people have to be willing. You can't build something sustainable if only one person is conscious. It takes two people doing their work, sometimes side by side, sometimes in conflict, sometimes in silence, but always with the shared vision of growing something real. Effort isn't about struggle for the sake of it. It's not about staying in dysfunction just to say you tried. It's about choosing the kind of work that builds, work that deepens connection, work that expands self awareness, work that makes love feel earned, not just felt. Because real love isn't a feeling, it's a practice. It's not just the butterflies, it's the breath you take before saying something honest. It's the moment you let your ego fall so the relationship can rise. It's the space you create for the other person to grow without taking it personally. And when that kind of effort is mutual, something incredible happens. The relationship becomes a mirror, but not just for pain. It becomes a mirror for possibility, for healing, for becoming. You start to look at each other and say, we've been through some things, but look at how far we've come. You start to see the progress, not because the love is perfect, but because it's intentional. You don't just stay together, you grow together. That's what makes the difference between love that fades and love that lasts. One is built on emotion, the other built on conscious, consistent effort. So the next time someone tells you love shouldn't be this hard, ask yourself, is this relationship hard because it's wrong or because it's asking me to grow? Is this discomfort a sign of dysfunction or is it an invitation to transform? Because love that transforms you isn't always easy, but the effort you put in, it creates a love worth keeping. True love isn't perfect. It's proven we've been fed the fantasy that true love is effortless, that if it's real, it flows, that if it's meant to be, it won't break, shake, or require you to wrestle with your demons. But let's tell the truth, real love doesn't come with a script or a safety net. It comes with choice, it comes with proof, and it doesn't always look pretty on the way there. True love isn't about never fighting, it's about how you fight. It's about whether you come back to the table after the disagreement. Whether you choose to understand rather than just win, whether you stay when it would be easier to shut down, ghost, or blame, because what proves love isn't the grand gestures or the perfectly filtered moments. It's the decision to stay engaged when the illusion of perfection breaks apart. Anyone can love you when things are smooth, but who loves you when you're not performing, who chooses you when you're messy, moody, or misunderstood, who reaches for your hand not just during laughter, but when your tears don't even make sense to you. That's where love is tested. That's where love is proven. And yet we panic at the first crack. We say, it shouldn't feel this hard. But isn't it supposed to get hard sometimes? Aren't two people, both imperfect, both carrying baggage, both still becoming, bound to rub against each other's raw edges? The test of love isn't if problems show up. It's whether the connection holds when they do. Do we shut down, or do we lean in? Do we punish each other, or do we pause and reflect? Do we keep score, or do we offer grace? Because love that lasts isn't some mystical, untouched fairy tale. It's the daily practice of seeing someone clearly and still choosing them. Not blindly, not without boundaries, but with full awareness. This person is not perfect, and neither am I, but we are showing up together. We think love should be a feeling that lasts, but feelings change. They rise and fall. That's not failure. That's the truth of emotional cycles. You won't always feel in love. There will be seasons of doubt, of distance, of dryness, but those aren't red flags. They are part of the rhythm. And it's the rhythm that teaches you how real your love actually is. Can you still speak kindly when your patience is thin? Can you still listen when you don't like what's being said? Can you still care for them while navigating your own emotional chaos? That's the work. That's the evidence. Love that's proven isn't about perfect alignment. It's about resilience. It's about repair. It's about learning to come back together again and again and again. People expect too much from love and too little from effort. They walk away because it doesn't feel right anymore. But real love will stop feeling right sometimes, not because it's fake, but because it's growing. And growth is rarely comfortable. We confuse comfort with compatibility, but real love doesn't always feel comfortable. It often pushes us to evolve. It pushes us to communicate better, to unpack our assumptions, to face the fears we thought we buried long ago. Isn't that why love is so transformative? Because it calls us out, calls us forward, and calls us deeper into ourselves. But that transformation doesn't happen in the honeymoon phase. It happens when the rose-colored glasses fall, when you stop idealizing the person and start loving them in their realness. When you say, I see your mess, I see your habits, I see the parts of you that still need healing, and I'm not here to fix you, I'm here to walk with you. That's proof. That's commitment. That's the kind of love that makes you feel safe and seen. Because love isn't just about compatibility, it's about capacity. Does this person have the capacity to grow, to apologize, to reflect, to hold space for your needs, even when they're different from theirs? Perfection is easy to fall in love with, but it's fake, and eventually life will strip it away. What remains after that is what proves whether the love is real. Do they show up on the hard days, not just the holidays? Do they hold your hand when you're struggling to hold yourself together? Do they speak truth when it would be easier to avoid the conversation? Love that is proven is not reactive, it's reflective. It doesn't need drama to feel alive. It finds intimacy in the stillness, in the silence, in the sacred mundane moments where no one is performing and everything is just real. And you don't always know you have this kind of love in the beginning. Sometimes it feels fake at first, like something built on shaky ground. But over time, through conscious choice, consistent effort, and honest communication, the shaky becomes steady. And then one day you realize you've been through storms, you've argued, you've misunderstood each other, you've faced things you didn't expect, but you didn't run, you didn't quit, you kept reaching for each other. Not because it was perfect, but because it was worth it. And that's when you know true love doesn't need to be flawless. It needs to be faithful to the process, to the evolution, to the promise that love is not just a moment, it's a movement you build with someone who's in it with you. Not just when it's beautiful, but when it's real. Commitment can turn pretending into presence. Sometimes love doesn't start with depth. It starts with masks, games, guesswork, with two people performing, hoping to be chosen, afraid to be rejected, pretending to be okay, pretending to be low maintenance, pretending to be perfect. And yet, somehow, from all that pretending, something real can still be born. Isn't that wild? But it only happens if commitment steps in. Commitment is the turning point. It's what turns fragile beginnings into grounded presence. It's the moment when someone stops asking, what do I need to do so you don't leave? And starts asking, what do I need to do so we both feel safe here? We live in a world obsessed with options. Swiping culture, plan B culture, one eye on the present, the other scanning the horizon. Everyone says they want connection, but few are willing to commit because commitment, it demands more than attraction. It asks for vulnerability, it asks for maturity, it asks for the courage to stay even when the newness fades. Pretending is easy. It's our default mode when we feel unsafe, pretending to be agreeable, pretending to not need much, pretending to be fine with things that actually make us feel small. And in the beginning of a relationship, we pretend a lot, we curate, we edit ourselves, we hide the triggers, the trauma, the truths. Why? Because we think if we show it too soon, we'll scare them away. But here's the thing, pretending eventually collapses. You can only wear the mask for so long before it starts to crack. And when it does, you're faced with the question, will this person still choose me without the performance? That's where commitment comes in. Commitment says, I'm not just here for your highlights, I'm here for your healing. It says you don't need to pretend to be low maintenance to be loved. You just need to be real. It says, I want to know the parts of you that feel unlovable because that's where the intimacy lies. Presence can't exist where there's performance because presence requires honesty. It requires you to be with someone, not just next to them. And the path from pretending to presence isn't automatic. It's built moment by moment with intentional commitment as the bridge. Think about it. When you don't feel emotionally safe, your nervous system goes into defense mode. You might become hyper independent. You stop asking for what you need. You say, I'm fine when you're not. You smile through the ache. You play it cool, hoping they'll just get it. That's not presence. That's protective detachment, but when someone commits to you not just in words, but in emotional consistency, you slowly begin to relax. You begin to believe, maybe I don't have to pretend anymore. Maybe I can actually just be here. That's when something extraordinary happens. You show up fully with your mess, your laughter, your uncertainty, your dreams, and they don't leave. They lean in. Commitment transforms the entire atmosphere of a relationship because now it's not about impressing. It's about connecting. It shifts the question from how do I keep you to how do I meet you where you really are. It shifts the behavior from I'll say what makes you happy to I'll speak my truth and trust that we can hold it together. It shifts the energy from anxiety to presence. But let's be honest, it's not easy. The journey from pretending to presence is terrifying at times. There will be moments when you open up and you're met with silence or confusion or discomfort, and you'll be tempted to retreat. To put the mask back on, to say, see, I knew it, it's safer to pretend. But if the commitment is real, the silence won't be the end. It'll be a space to grow into, because commitment says we'll figure this out. Even if it takes time, even if it gets messy, even if we say the wrong things at first, presence means being emotionally available, not just physically near. It means when your partner is hurting, you don't just offer advice, you offer yourself. Your listening, your patience, your touch, your words that don't fix but validate, and that level of presence, it doesn't come from perfect compatibility. It comes from the courage to show up. Commitment makes space for that courage. Without commitment, every misunderstanding feels like a threat. Every disagreement feels like the end. Every time you express a need, you wonder, is this too much? Will they leave? With commitment, those moments still hurt, but they're not deal breakers. They're invitations to learn, to adjust, to heal. And yes, people think commitment means losing freedom. But what if true freedom comes from being known, from no longer needing to pretend, from finally being able to say, this is me and I'm still loved here? That's the paradox. Commitment creates the safety required for authentic presence, and in presence, connection deepens. Sex becomes more than physical, it becomes spiritual. Conversations stop being surface level and start becoming soul deep. Even the silence between you feels full, not empty, but you can't shortcut this. You can't fake presence. You can't force depth without trust. And you definitely can't demand vulnerability from someone who doesn't feel emotionally safe. So the work begins with both people asking, are we really here? Or are we just playing the roles we think will keep us from being abandoned? Are we committed to each other's comfort zones? Or are we committed to each other's becoming? Because when the pretending fades and presence takes its place, that's when you meet the real person. Not the version they were trying to be, but the one who exhaled, let their guard down, and said, thanks for staying. This is who I really am. And that's when love finally begins to feel like home. Pain is the portal where fake love gets refined. Let's tell the truth. Real love doesn't grow in ease. It grows in impact, and nothing hits harder than pain. The arguments that left you speechless, the distance that made you feel invisible, the betrayal you didn't expect, the version of them you didn't know existed. It's in those moments, those gut-wrenching, heart-piercing, what the hellies, happening moments, that fake love either breaks apart or gets refined. Pain doesn't always mean something's wrong. Sometimes it's proof that something's waking up, that something deeper is trying to emerge from beneath the performance, the fantasy, the illusions we all carry at the start. Pain says, stop pretending, start paying attention, because fake love knows how to imitate all the right moves, right? It knows how to say, I love you, without actually seeing you. It knows how to show up for date nights but disappear emotionally when it matters. It gives you attention but not intention. It gives you access but not accountability, and it feels like love. Until it doesn't, that's where pain steps in. Pain is the spotlight. It shows you what's real and what's rehearsed. It exposes the cracks in the connection, the unresolved resentment, the fears, the avoidance, the emotional laziness that's been hiding under the surface. Pain pulls it all out, not to destroy the relationship, but to reveal it. What do you do when you see your partner's shadow for the first time? What do you do when your own shadow is called out in the reflection of their hurt? Do you shut down? Do you defend? Do you blame? Or do you lean in, finally ready to see what you've both been avoiding? This is where the shift happens, from imitation love to integration love. Integration love says, okay, we've hurt each other. Now what? Do we pretend like it didn't matter? Or do we sit in the discomfort, the guilt, the rage, and try to understand it? Pain forces a decision. Will you become more conscious, or just more careful, more aware of the emotional patterns at play, or more guarded because the illusion cracked? So many relationships don't survive this phase, not because they're doomed, but because they never knew pain was part of the refining process. They thought love should always feel good. They thought conflict was a sign to leave. But true love doesn't always feel good. It feels real, and real can be messy, real can be loud, real can bring you to your knees, but real is also where the truth lies, the truth about how you love, the truth about how you run. The truth about how you've used control or silence or sweetness as survival tools. Pain teaches you where your emotional limits are, and if you're brave enough, it teaches you how to expand them. Can you hold space for someone else's hurt without centering your own ego? Can you take feedback about how you show up without collapsing into shame? Can you stay present when the version of love you thought you were giving isn't the one they're experiencing? These are the refining fires. And no one walks through them unchanged. Pain invites maturity, emotional maturity, the kind that doesn't react but reflects, the kind that doesn't punish with withdrawal but leans in with curiosity, the kind that says, I might not understand your pain yet, but I'm here, I'm listening, I'm willing to learn what love actually looks like for you. This is where fake love either dies or gets reshaped into something meaningful. We romanticize ease, but love is not proven when everything is going right. It's proven when everything feels wrong, and yet you both stay, not out of fear, not out of guilt, but out of devotion to what's possible. When your partner lashes out, not because they hate you, but because they feel unsafe, can you look underneath the anger and see the wound? When you feel triggered by their distance, can you name your need instead of testing them through silence? When things break down, can you resist the urge to villainize and instead ask, what part of this pattern belongs to me? Pain is an invitation to deepen, not disappear, but only if you've built enough safety to actually sit in the fire without burning each other down. And if you haven't, then pain becomes a compass. It tells you where repair is needed. It tells you where you've been disconnected from yourself, from your truth, from each other. It tells you what needs healing, not just hiding. Because pain that gets pushed down becomes resentment. Pain that gets avoided becomes emotional armor, but pain that gets tended to, that becomes the birthplace of intimacy. Yes, pain can destroy, but it can also build. It can strip away the superficial and make space for something honest, something sacred, something earned, that fake love you started with. It doesn't have to stay fake. It can evolve if both people are willing to face the discomfort. If both people are willing to grow inward, not just forward. Sometimes the person you met on day one is only the seed of who they can become, and the same goes for you. Love isn't just about finding the right person. It's about becoming the person who can hold that love, especially when it hurts. So when pain shows up, don't just ask, why is this happening to us? Ask, what is this pain trying to show us about ourselves? Ask, how can we become better lovers, not in romance, but in responsibility? Because that's where the refinement happens, not in perfection, but in presence, not in fantasy, but in facing each other, especially when it's uncomfortable. The relationships that survive pain are not lucky. They're intentional. They're grounded in the ability to say, we are not perfect people, but we are willing people, willing to learn, willing to unlearn, willing to apologize, willing to feel it all together. Pain doesn't destroy true love, it reveals it. Pain doesn't make love fake, it purifies it, but only if you're willing to stay in the fire long enough to let it refine you. Healing doesn't always mean leaving. Sometimes it means learning to stay with new eyes. We've been taught that healing always looks like walking away, cutting them off, burning the bridge, protecting your peace by erasing the person. And yes, sometimes that's exactly what healing demands. But what if, just what if, healing doesn't always mean leaving? What if it sometimes means learning how to stay, but with new eyes? Staying doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're choosing pain or ignoring red flags. It doesn't mean you're betraying yourself. Sometimes it means you've grown strong enough to see the full picture, not just the painful part. Healing is not always about escape, it's about clarity, and clarity reveals layers. You start to see that maybe the story wasn't as simple as they hurt me. Maybe it was, we hurt each other from places we hadn't healed yet. Maybe it wasn't just betrayal, it was fear. Maybe it wasn't indifference, it was emotional survival. Maybe it wasn't a lack of love, it was a lack of tools, and that shift. It's everything, because when you heal, your eyes change. You stop seeing through the lens of pain and start seeing through the lens of understanding. And when your lens shifts, your love shifts. You start asking better questions. Not, why did you fail me? But, where were we unequipped? Not, why didn't you love me right? But, what did we never learn about loving well? That's when staying becomes powerful. Not passive, not desperate, powerful, because you're no longer staying to be saved. You're staying with eyes wide open, grounded in self-awareness and relational maturity. You're not stuck. You're choosing to do the deeper work, to unlearn what love isn't, to practice what love is, to explore what could rise from the ashes if both people are willing to rebuild, with truth, not illusion. Sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do in love is stay, but not as the same person as someone transformed. It takes serious growth to say, I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be present. I'm not here to punish you for my wounds. I'm here to understand why they exist. I'm willing to see you not as the villain of my story, but as someone also carrying your own bruises. That level of staying is sacred. It's not settling. It's seeing the pain, seeing the pattern, seeing the potential. And yes, this kind of staying is not for every situation. If someone is harming you, gaslighting you, abusing you, your healing absolutely means walking away, no question. But if the love was once real and the pain came from miscommunication, fear, or emotional immaturity, maybe healing doesn't mean cutting ties. Maybe it means restoring connection through consciousness. Think about this: when you see the same partner through healed eyes, they might not even look the same. Their triggers, now you see them as trauma, not personal attacks. Their silence, now you recognize it as shame, not rejection. Their emotional distance, now you understand its protection, not proof they don't care. And when you are seen through new eyes, it changes everything. You're no longer just the needy one. You're someone craving safety. You're no longer too sensitive. You're someone with deep emotional radar. You're no longer the problem. You're a mirror for what needs attention. Healing gives you the capacity to love without distortion. And what does that create? A space where both people can evolve. Because now the love is no longer about survival, it's about transformation. You're not begging for scraps of affection. You're creating a language of connection. You're not demanding perfection. You're asking for presence. You're not playing roles. You're rewriting the script. And if both people say yes to that, if both are willing to show up not as who they pretended to be, but who they're becoming, then staying becomes the bravest thing you'll ever do. It's easy to love someone you haven't seen all the way. It's easy to leave when things get hard and call it self-respect. But staying with new eyes, That's a decision rooted in courage. It means choosing curiosity over control. It means asking what needs healing between us instead of blaming. It means sitting in hard conversations without shutting down or storming out. It means finding a way forward that honors who you are now, not just who you were when the pain happened, because healed eyes don't ignore the past. They just don't let it drive anymore. They allow you to say, yes, you hurt me, and I hurt you. Yes, we broke down, and we both deserve better. Yes, we've failed, but maybe this time we're ready to face it. You can't build something real if you're still seeing through the cracks of the past, but when your vision clears, you see that love was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be practiced, and practice takes time. It takes presence. It takes two people willing to meet each other where they actually are, not where they wish the other would be. So, no, healing doesn't always mean walking away. Sometimes it means walking back in with wisdom, not naive, not desperate, not delusional, wise, whole. And finally able to say, I'm not staying because I'm afraid of starting over. I'm staying because I believe we can start again, better. This time with our eyes open, this time with our hearts awake, this time with love that's been earned.